In this video, we're going to talk about some of the common signs you would see in your spouse if he is a sex addict. And I just want to remind you, ladies, that this topic is a part of a series. Make sure that you watch all of the series and not just this topic, because it'll be really helpful to unfold all the different things that we have to say about sex addiction and being married to a sex addict. Now, I'm in the studio again today with Cherise, so glad you're back.
Thank you.
And so now today, so last time we talked about just the view of sex and what happens when you're married to a sex addict, your view of sex is skewed. And not only for your spouse who's the addict, but it also skews you as the spouse.
Right.
We talked about a sex addiction. So today we're going to talk about what are the signs a woman should be watching for if she's thinking, I think my husband might have an addiction.
Well, you brought up the kind of the off sex.
Yes.
And that's kind of where it begins, I think, is you recognize that this doesn't feel right.
Okay.
Like there's that feeling of this isn't.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable doing these things.
Okay.
But when I first realized we had a problem, I noticed that he had his computer out and he was hiding like what he was doing on it.
Okay.
And I didn't really say anything because it is it can be private
Sure.
for people, like whatever. Okay. But the phone was also an issue. When I'd ask to borrow the phone, he would be, wonder why and get all panicked. And I could see the panic in his face that he didn't want me to have access to that. And so that was
another thing.
Red flag.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think too, they tend to go off and isolate. They hide.
Okay.
They're in places where they're able to privately message people and do the things that they're doing in secret.
Okay, so the first one you mentioned, I want to make sure we go back to that they might ask you to do off things sexually in the bedroom that you're not comfortable doing.
Right.
And so that was one of the first cues for you of like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
So it's like a fantasy thing. Maybe it's like you had said in our last topic, kind of acting out porn in your own marriage.
Yeah, I feel like it puts pressure on you to want to do those things because they like it.
Okay.
And they like it. And so where you may not like it or you may not feel like it in that moment or want to do certain things in that moment, they're not satisfied. They're only seeking to please themselves.
Okay.
So they're not really satisfied unless you're doing it the way they want to.
Okay. So asking you to do things you're not comfortable with, lots of secrecy.
Right.
With phone,
yes.
computer. Would you say there's any other sign that a woman might notice?
I would say that for our situation, it came down to normalizing. Like I mentioned in the last segment that I felt like, oh, it's okay, like a little dabbling in pornography. Yeah, that's all right? Because even in my worldview,
sure.
Everyone's doing that.
Right.
So, is it really that big of a deal? And even they'll convince you that, oh, that's not that big a deal because they want to feel justified too. And so there's that normalizing.
Okay. Which I would imagine being married to someone where in a healthy marriage you feel safe and secure in that relationship, that if you're being asked to do things sexually that you're like, I'm not comfortable doing that, I don't want to do that, and then your husband's like, no, it's fine, everything's fine, just do this. Knowing full well that it's not about you, it's about pleasing them. That would just be a really hard thing to grapple with.
Right. It is. It's it really does make you feel less than.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so now let's just briefly talk about what happens in your behavior as the spouse. What would a woman need to be thinking? Okay, so yes, I've seen those signs. Now talk about what are the signs in the woman that maybe she's in this situation.
Well, I think in my situation, I can't speak for all women, but I do feel like I justified a lot of it and I bought into the worldview. I bought into the normalizing and felt like he really wasn't maybe it really wasn't as bad as it was, you know.
So you then buy into normalizing, you make excuses. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Everybody does it. And,
Okay.
And I even found myself, going down that rabbit hole with, multiple partners. I think that's why people end up thinking, let's swing,
Sure.
They get caught up in those ideas because they know people who are doing it. They feel like, well, everyone's doing it. It comes down to the worldview, I really think.
Right.
It comes into play.
Well, and I think that that's the trick here. We live in a society and a culture today where sex is very far from what God intended. And we're seeing the consequences of that, right? We are seeing that happen in our culture. And now it's inundating even in our kids at younger and younger ages. And so this is a real serious issue. And so, okay, so Sharice, thank you for that. So ladies, those were just some common signs, things to look for in your husband, things to notice in yourself. If you're feeling conflicted, if you're making excuses, if you're normalizing it, even though you're uncomfortable, and you're feeling like your spouse is being secretive and hiding, those will all be signs that you should be, your antenna should be up, like something's not right here and we're gonna need to deal with it.
Right.
Okay, so use those questions. Again, with every topic in this series, use the questions and talk about it with someone in your life. Don't go through this alone. This is hard, it's scary, it's difficult, and you're gonna need a trusted person to walk with you. And we'll see you in the next video.